2 hours of meticulous statement were waiting for him, in which he has corroborated time and again that that kiss was not consensual, and that he intended to denounce it from the first moment. It was totally out of context. And there I knew that my boss was kissing me, and this does not happen or should not happen in any social and work environment. Did you feel violated? Yes, I felt disrespected. She has said that she could not react. Rubiales' lawyer has tried to clarify if she heard or saw that he was asking for her consent. Did you see a movement of the lips? When he grabs me effusively by the ears, I no longer hear or see anything. I'm looking at eye level, and the next thing was the kiss. The defense has questioned his attitude in the post-kiss celebratory videos. She has explained that she felt disgust and rejection, but got into world champion mode. I don't even have to be crying in a room or have thrown myself on the floor when the act happened to imply that I didn't like that. He has detailed the pressures he says he suffered since the locker room celebration to support the former president. Please help him by making a video, and I said no, I wasn't going to do anything. What? Alleged pressures later on the plane, and even on the celebration trip in Ibiza. The other three defendants, former national team coach Jorge Vilda, and former federation officials Albert Luque and Ruben Rivera, are also in the dock for them. They were quite insistent. The situation was already overwhelming. She said she felt abandoned by the federation, the director of women's football, who recommended that she not do anything against her will, and the press officer who has disassociated herself from the Rubiales support statement, have also testified as witnesses. It was the dream moment. They had just made history in Sydney, and then, in the midst of the euphoria, in everyone's eyes, this happened, before arriving in Spain, in the middle of the return trip, and there was controversy. But I didn't like it. It was the first reaction. Rubiales began to rain reproaches, and he removed iron to the gesture.
Let's ignore the idiots, the stupid ones, really, hey.
It was not the only gesture he was reproached for, and he changes his tone, tries to justify himself.
I was probably wrong, I have to admit it. What happened.
You're out of the game. The apologies did not convince. The federation is that it used Rubiales, but the image had already gone around the world. Unacceptable. Macho. The complaints and requests for resignation piled up. The player condemned Rubiales' behavior and called for exemplary measures. But a part of men's football continued to applaud the president of the federation. At the extraordinary meeting, he denounced a hunt.
It was spontaneous, mutual, euphoric, and consensual. I'm not resigning.
But he was already out of the game. It is false, he replied, and in beautiful. The kiss was not consensual. I felt vulnerable and the victim of an assault. I was simply not respected. The player also denounced pressures on her and her environment to publicly support Rubiales, coercions and threats, for which other charges are also going to trial. She reported it to the prosecutor's office, and with her teammates said the Metu of Spanish football is over. Suspended by FIFA, Rubiales resigns 3 weeks after the kiss, which ended up eclipsing this other one, that of triumph, the symbol of a victory that opens the way to the footballers of the future. The government does not give details, but the joint negotiation on immigration powers is going ahead.
A negotiation is to make your starting position more flexible. It is to look for a balance in which you feel comfortable, and you understand that the one in front feels comfortable.
Although Puigdemont's people are not moving from their position at the moment, they want everything, including border control.
For Catalonia, it is the integral delegation of competences in immigration matters, integral.
The leader of the PP accuses the PSOE of not putting a brake on an independence movement that he assures always demands more.
The independence movement begins by asking for border control to prevent the entry of irregular immigrants, and ends up turning an autonomous community into a state.
And Vice President Yolanda Diaz asks Peyo for more responsibility in immigration matters and insists that the limits on what can be ceded are set by the law. It has to conform to 2 rules. The first is a directive that regulates these competences, and the second is the constitutional mandate. And he assures that the government's negotiations will never exceed those principles. The government and the Generalitat Valenciana are open to working together on the reconstruction of the Dana Ground Zero. Minister Angel Victor Torres has accepted the proposal of the Valencian Vice President Lieutenant General GP, polls to create a joint coordination commission. The Committee of Experts for Reconstruction, promoted by the Central Executive, has been constituted today.
As other Vox officials have done before, Garca Gallardo leaves amid criticism of the party leadership. He talks about discrepancies, and that there is no longer a plurality of leaderships. This weekend, he refused to sign the expulsion, decided in Madrid, of 2 prosecutors from his group in Castilla y León. The 2 had branded the formation a scam and a cult.
They have cut off our heads for asking for democracy and asking for a voice to be heard.
The national spokesman accuses them of undermining the party and responds thus to Garca Gallardo. No one is indispensable. They recognize that their departure is a surprise, but that it does not take them away from their goal. His departure and his way of leaving today makes everyone who made the Vox alternative frustrated happy. This project transcends people. Garca Gallardo, who until now was on the executive of the party, came to politics 3 years ago, when Abascal named him a candidate for the elections of Castilla y León. With the Vox, he entered an autonomous government for the first time. Until then, almost no one put a face to it. What kind of vice president face is being put on Juan Garca Gallardo? His departure joins the list of leaders who have left the party of Abascal, such as Roque o Monasterio, Espinosa de los Monteros, Macarena Olona, and opens another crisis in the party. La Soria always comes out in the rankings among the 4 or 5 cities that the garbage rate is the cheapest. In San Sebastian, we have been calculating the bill that citizens have to pay based on water consumption for quite a few years now. Because we have understood that where more is consumed is also where more garbage is going to be generated. Fees up to 7 times higher according to the city council, because until now everyone charged or not the fee, only passed on a part, or paid for the treatment and the real one with other taxes. That cost comes out of the rest of taxes. When the neighbor pays EB, he gets out of there. Brussels asks to recycle much more waste, and that is more expensive. The average fees are about €100 per family per year, and that this covers 57% of the costs. Costs of a service that municipalities are now obliged to fully charge the citizen by increasing the rate where it already exists. Well, we had to increase it by 26.54%, the garbage taxes, which means an income of about €26 million. That is equivalent to the expense we have in the garbage collection service. Or by creating a new tax such as alcohol dehenners that will reduce the EB to compensate for it.
The average rate for the residents of Alcohol will be about €140 approximately, and what we have done has been to compensate for the rest of municipal taxes by lowering that EB to the legal minimum.
From April, the tax will be mandatory. More income for the consistories and more expenses to increase a recycling that in Spain does not reach 40%, when the commitment to Europe is 55% for this same year.
15 years in prison for a pedophile who has admitted to more than 40 crimes of corruption of minors. The man, who will have to serve the entire sentence, was facing a request for 162 years in prison, but has finally reached an agreement with the parties. He has admitted that he posed as a young girl on Instagram to get sex videos of minors. The police found more than 8,000 pedophile files on his devices. Of activity, commercial is served, and according to experts, no country is exempt from getting rid.
We live in a totally globalized world, and the fact that you can put tariffs on one region or another is going to have implications for the rest.
One of the first consequences will be noticed in the prices. They are going to rise globally, just as central banks have lowered interest rates numerous times to control them.
This type of measures could cause new spikes in inflation, modifying the strategy of central banks, and, above all, penalize supply chains again.
The result, loss of competitiveness, distrust on the part of investors, and much lower growth prospects, also for the United States, and with an effect on currencies.
That would be the risk, that we would enter into a certain downward movement of almost all currencies, or at least of trading partners, against the dollar.
Although experts say that no one is interested in getting into trade battle right now, and that it is more of a Trump negotiating strategy, especially with the European Union.
In other words, the goal in itself is not to raise tariffs, but to negotiate other issues. In the case of Europe, the main issue is to negotiate defense spending.
The most sensitive sectors, they agree, will be consumer goods and industry, especially the automobile, one of the most punished export sectors precisely today in the markets. Mexican flags at demonstrations in the United States to support immigrants and against the mass deportations decreed by Donald Trump. In Los Angeles, They have blocked the largest highway that crosses the city.